Okay, let's continue with sealed roof deck, or SWR. So a few changes here, and for one, we changed the name of it. So sealed roof deck, secondary water resistance. So we're talking about what's applied as a supplemental means to protect the dwelling from water intrusion in the event the roof covering is lost. Standard underlayment or hot mops felts don't apply as an SWR. So there you go. Few little changes here. So a sealed roof deck now, also called an SWR, is a fully adhered polymer modified bitumen roof underlayment. Tape over deck systems, meaning seam seal tapes with a felt or synthetic. A double layer of felt or synthetic with no tape, right? 2 layers, some requirements there. We'll go into some of that. Foam products, and of course they have to be installed along the roof deck intersections of all panel joints. And then, of course, there's a box here, which I'm not sure what they're going to do with this box at this point, but it says check here if the entire roof deck is covered. So what I'm assuming is they're trying to see if it's there's a question whether it's closed cell or open cell. We're really talking about closed cell foam here because that open cell would not be a secondary water resistance. We have no sealed roof deck, meaning, it's not. And then we have unknown or undetermined. So let's get into it a little bit. I tell everybody to read the form, and I say this, and most people don't. They don't. Sometimes they ask a question, they haven't actually read it, and then when you tell them, like, "Oh, yeah, I didn't see that," but read the entire form. But what I want to point out here is as a supplemental means. Now, there was some argument in the past about tile roof. If you had peel and stick on a tile roof, it wasn't really supplemental. It was the primary water resistance. But since then, some people have come out and said, and citizens specifically come out and said to me, nope, we count it as long as peel and stick, it's good. So just keep that in mind. They're considering the tiles the primary. I would say we have a little issue here with the double layers of underlayment, but let's keep moving on. You'll see why it probably doesn't matter. So, it's fine though. So, but in the past, years ago, we used to teach, hey, you couldn't put, peel and stick was the primary on a tile. No longer counts. So we're considering that a supplemental means, just so you understand. And again, we'll talk about the spray foam. We'll come into some of that. So what do we mean by complying with ASTM D1970, which is under fully adhered and tape? Okay. Those are important aspects. And what you have to do is you have to look it up and you can find out what it means. And basically what it means is it adheres to the plywood. It's got a low temperature flexibility, its thickness and strength, scientific stuff that we don't generally get into. But here are some common products. So you're going to find that you may have to look them up in the beginning. Once you know what they are and what they mean, then you're probably going to be good to go. I'm going to say this right up front. Most of your new roofs that are meeting the current standards for install are going to be fine. So, but here's some common products they use that comply with ASTM D1970, right? And then we can have a double layer of felt or synthetic with no tape, but we have to comply with ASTM D226 Type 2. There's other options here, so you're going to have to look those up and know what they are. So you're going to need to know what the underlayment is in order to see if it qualifies for that. Again, I'm going to say that most of your building code stuff is going to be like, yes, it qualifies, but you're going to want to verify that. So here's your tape, your D1970 tape, right? And this is what it looks like, seam seal tape, and we can put this on the plywood seams. We've seen pictures of this in the past. Again, a couple of different options here. Protect a roof deck seam tape, and GAF makes a seam tape as well. Now, one of the things they brought up was flashing tape, and this is where this comes from. Huber Zip Systems makes a roof that has a coating. The plywood is coated, or the decking is coated, so it's technically a waterproofing, and then we seam seal the tape. So this would count as an underlayment, even though you really don't have a separate underlayment. It's a continuous system, so you're good, and this qualifies. So again, you're talking about the AAMA 711 level 3 high performance self-adhering flashing tape, zip tape. So what does a sealed deck roof option 1 look like? Well, this is it right here. This is a peel and stick product. This is, stuck down and, they're lapped and sealed together. And if you ever put one down and try to get one up, they don't generally come up very easily. One thing I'm going to point out is, though, and this will come up here in a minute, is on occasionally, depending upon the manufacturer and the slope of the roof, may have to be nailed as well. And your end laps may be nailed. Just keep that in mind, because what we're going to have to look at later on is you may want to look at the roof decking from the underneath to see if there is nails and what those nails look like to see if the roof underlayment is nailed. So when we talk about sealed deck option 2, we're going to go right into the nailing and we'll talk about it. And we can have 2 layers, and we can have the felt and the synthetic with the tape. So here we are, and you'll see that most of your products have a nailing pattern required. Again, you can look this up when you find out what product it is. Almost always when we pull a roof permit, you have to put in what your products are, and you need to put in the NOA. So anybody who's got a newer roof, it's going to be pretty straightforward to look up. So something you want to think about in doing your research before doing an inspection is, let's look this stuff up ahead of time so I know what I'm looking at, right? So, and yes, you can use a synthetic here in this place over the tape. So here's our sealed roof deck option 3, and this is the double layers of underlayment. Again, has to meet the requirements of ASTM, right? And you're going to see the nailing pattern here. Now, these are just general guidelines. These are not 100%. I'm sure some manufacturers have some weird stuff out there, so you're going to want to make sure you're looking at the product, but that's what it looked like. The reason why we want to show you these nailing patterns is because we're trying to identify it from underneath when you may want to look at this. And I'll show you a couple of pictures. It's much easier to see live and in person. In an attic with a flashlight, it kind of stands out and jumps out at you, but start looking for that. What do we need? I used to use this picture in all my presentations, said, hey, as long as it said peel and stick, we were good. Well, now with the new criteria, I would say, yes, you want to make sure it meets the guidelines. So just having a receipt is not enough. So what does peel and stick look like? So here we are. This is typical shiny stuff underneath the roof deck. This is a dimensional lumber. By the way, it has a pretty large gap, and there are requirements for roofing with large gaps in the deck, but we won't go down there. Here's the spray foam product. So this is a closed cell foam again, and this is designed as a water barrier as well as an adhesive. So same pictures as before. Closed cell spray foam you will not be able to push your finger into, and it's designed again to have that strength, durability, and waterproofing. So again, this came from the Flash group, and you'll notice that it's a little weak in areas. You notice our new requirements say 1.5 inches. So I like to point that out because this would technically not qualify for my opinion. So this comes from Brother Mike, and this is a full coverage of foam. Now, that's when you're going to check that box. It's fully covered. But also, you're going to want to make sure that this is a closed cell if you're checking this. And that's, I think, one reason why they're asking this question, because they want it verified. So, I don't know that too many people would do a closed cell on the roof deck fully covered. You wind up with some moisture, condensation issues, things like that. So it's going to be pretty rare that you'd find a closed cell fully covered. And this is an open cell product. And by the way, it's not thick enough either. So best place to look for the full coverage, ridge. Why? Well, a couple things. So if we're seam sealing seams, I don't know anybody who seam seals the ridge. Not to say it shouldn't be done, not saying it won't be done. I'm just saying I don't know anybody who seam seals the ridge. So I'm going to bet this is a full coverage. Now, we can argue that all day long, and you can see what product they had in their permit, but almost always it's not going to be that way. So places we want to avoid looking for peel and stick are the valleys, the penetrations, and changes in pitch. Why? Because peel and stick can be used as a flashing, valley flashing, that kind of stuff. So a lot of times you'll use a valley flashing, a peel and stick, and then use like a synthetic or something else somewhere else. So just keep that in mind when you're looking, that, if you look at a penetration, it may just be around that penetration. It may not be around on the whole roof deck. So, and here's a good example of it. So we have a peel and stick. You can see that product laying in the valley. You can see it rolled out in the valley, and then you can see the wonderful cutting job they did of the synthetic, and they of course cap nailed the synthetic. And you can see again, if you look at the picture on the left, you can see the great job they did lining those nails up right to the targets where they're supposed to be. But I'm being funny there, but again, you can see why you would look in the valley and you would see peel and stick, but in the rest of the roof you may not. So doesn't mean they didn't use seam seal tape somewhere else. So that's another point. So penetrations, again, the same thing. You could use it as a sealant around penetrations, which is not a bad idea, especially if you're like using it synthetic. And I think that's where I would go if I was doing a roof and I needed to use synthetic. So again, looking at the ridge, you can see this is a cut open ridge. Looking at the ridge vent, you can see the synthetic right there. So I'm going to bet because it's cut along the edge, it's a full coverage. Nobody's got to cut along the long way on seam seal tape. There's just no need to do that. So we want to check the nailing pattern. So, and I say that because what we can look at here is we can look at the old nails that were removed. So you can see the holes. You can look at the shingle nails and look at the shingle nail pattern. Usually that, you're going to have towards the center of the shingle, you're going to have that first third and second third, you're going to have two nails that are only a couple inches apart. And then you're going to have the two nails from the end of the shingles. And you can follow the pattern, and they're about 5 to 6 inches staggered up the roof. So it's good to understand that. So when you're looking at shingle nails, and typically shingle nails will be different than your underlayment nails. Underlayment nails are usually a little thinner and usually a little longer. So just keep that in mind. And I say usually because there's obviously different products approved. The shingles are definitely look different. The nails definitely look different. And once you start seeing it, you'll recognize it. So we can, again, use this peel and stick as a flashing. Poor job, but whatever. This is Joe here looking at this. And he goes there and he goes, yep. And then he goes, we got synthetic at the ridge. So keep that in mind. It's not that uncommon.